So today's lesson is going to be on CP Economics. It's going to be on Unit 3, Firm Production, and we're going to be talking specifically about short-run and long-run analysis. We're going to be looking at two California Department of Education standards for economics today. The first of those standards is History and Social Science Content Standard 12.2.1. Which is to discuss the economic principles that guide location and distribution of industry, transportation, and retail. The second standard, Department of Education standard, we're going to be looking at is the Common Core Speaking and Listening Standards 1. That's going to be dealing with the initiation and collaboration of a range of discussions with diverse partners in grades 11 through 12, texts and issues. We're going to be focusing primarily on the content standards during this micro lecture, and we will get into the Common Core Speaking and Listening Standards in class as we follow up. So an overview of what we'll be discussing today, we're going to be talking about one component of what is referred to as cost profit analysis. It's a common tool used in business, which we call in economics, we've been calling them firms, but it's a common tool used by businesses for planning purposes. So in order to understand what we're talking about, let's look at the two basic terms. We're looking at short-run costs versus long-run costs. The biggest difference between a short-run cost and a long-run cost is that in short-run costs, at least one input, which is what we're calling a cost, is going to be fixed. So let's take the example of a lease for a moment. If we have a lease, generally speaking, a lease is signed for a term of months or years. If we sign a 6-month lease, for that 6-month period of time, that is a fixed cost. We have to pay the same amount every single month. However, if we look at the lease from a long-run standard, that is not a fixed cost, because in 6 months' time we will still need to have a lease somewhere unless we purchase another piece of property, but we are not tied to that 6-month lease that we've already signed. We may find a better deal somewhere else. We may negotiate a better deal with our landlord, or we may purchase a different piece of property and be able to work out a better deal for ourselves on a monthly fixed cost basis. So in the long run, a lease is not a fixed cost. In the short run, a lease is a fixed cost. In today's lesson, you are going to be taking the position of a small business owner. You're going to be assuming that you own a bagel shop. Furthermore, you're going to be assuming that your bagel shop is profitable. That is a big success story. Most restaurants fail within the first year. If you are a successful bagel shop that is profitable, you are doing incredibly well. If you are a profitable bagel shop, you are going to want to expand, because in business, if you are not growing, you are dying. You have to continue to figure out different ways to expand. There are two basic ways that a business can expand. You can either expand vertically or you can expand horizontally. If you have a choice between the two, it is going to be preferable for you to expand vertically. The reason for this is that expanding vertically does not increase costs. At least it doesn't increase costs as much as expanding horizontally would. Let me give you an example. If you own a bagel shop and you have an existing stream of customers, an existing customer base who comes in and they purchase bagels from you. If you were to expand vertically, what that would mean is that you were able to convince those customers, which you already had, that instead of just buying one bagel, maybe they should buy 2 bagels, or perhaps they should buy 2 bagels and a cup of coffee, or 2 bagels, a cup of coffee, and an orange juice. That's vertical expansion. That costs considerably less money than horizontal expansion would. If you decide to expand horizontally, you're looking at not 1 lease, but 2 leases. You're looking at not the quantity of bagels it would require for you to run 1 bagel shop, but it's the quantity of bagels it would require for you to run 2 bagel shops. You're looking at not the amount of employees that is required to run one bagel shop, but the amount of employees that is required to run 2 bagel shops. Your variables increase greatly, which is why it is preferable to expand vertically for as long as you possibly can. What we're saying in this scenario, however, is that you, as a profitable bagel owner, a bagel store owner in a small town, have expanded vertically as far as you can expand. You have already maximized your customer count, your average customer transaction, meaning your customer, how much money that your customer pays you every time they come through your door. They're not just buying that bagel, they're also buying the orange juice and the coffee. You've maximized your customer repeat business. They're not coming in once a week, they're coming in 3 times a week, and they're bringing their friend. You've done all of the vertical expansion that you can do. Now you have to look at horizontal expansion. And when you're talking about horizontal expansion, short run and long run analysis come into play. So the first thing that you're going to be able to identify going into short run and long run analysis is that you have a bottleneck. A bottleneck is a business term which essentially means that there is one element, one component of your business that is keeping you from further production capacity. It can be anything, really. It could be the fact that you had too few employees. It could be that you had too many employees, actually, but more often it's that you have too few employees. It could be that you have zoning restrictions that only allow you to produce bagels from 6 in the morning till 8 in the evening, and so you have a block of time where you can't be productive past that period of time. It could be any number of things that are causing you to have a reduced production capacity. What you have identified in this scenario is that your bottleneck is coming from your equipment. The equipment that you currently own, it's a great system. You've got the top of the line bagel oven and the top of the line bagel kettle, and it works great for your single store. But if you're going to expand horizontally, you can't produce enough bagels to supply both stores. We're going to call, in the lesson today, we're going to call the quantity you're able to produce, we're going to call that SAC1. That's what you're able to produce with your current equipment. But what you would need if you're going to make 2 bagel shops, or especially if you're going to make 3 bagel shops, you're going to need to have more equipment. That's your bottleneck. That's what you're trying to solve through short run and long run analysis. So the question that you're asking yourself as you're looking at the bottleneck, the question that you would be asking yourself as a business person, perhaps not in economic terms, but the question is going to be, can I make enough money with my expansion to cover my long run costs? That's question 1. But then question 2, which is perhaps more important, is can I make enough money with the expansion to cover my short run costs? And let me tell you why it's important, more important, to look at your short run costs than it is to look at your long run costs in certain circumstances. John Maynard Keynes, he said the following. He said, "This long run is a misleading guide to current affairs. In the long run, we're all dead. Economists set themselves too easy a task if in a tempestuous season they can only tell us when the storm is long past, the ocean is flat again." What is he saying? Essentially what he's telling us, what Keynes is telling us in that scenario, is that long-term planning is fine and good and should be used. But we don't live in the long term. We live in the short term. If I have enough equipment that's going to supply 3 stores and eventually turn the profit once my customers start coming in the door, like I know they will, or I hope they will, I assume they will, once word of mouth spreads how good my bagels are, if I have all of that stuff in place and my long-term planning looks perfect, but in the short run I can't pay the bills, I'm out of business. This is why firms, when they do their cost production analysis, this is why they look so closely at the short run costs as well as the long run costs, because Anything can be made to look good on paper, but if you can't pay the daily bills, it doesn't matter. You're going to go out of business. So what does that look like graphically when we're putting together this short run, long run analysis? Well, graphically, you're going to have a graph. On one side, it's going to have your average costs. On the bottom, you're going to be measuring your output. And you're going to have your long run average cost analysis. Now, you're also going to have 3 scenarios in between here. You're going to have your SAC1, short run average costs 1. You're going to have scenario 2, which we're going to be calling SAC2, short run average costs 2, or scenario 3, SAC3, short run average costs 3. And what you're going to see is that as a prudent business owner, you have decided to take 3 options, 3 scenarios of possible ways into the future, and you've decided to crunch the numbers and see which one works best for what you are trying to accomplish. In scenario 1, you're going to keep your current equipment, and you're going to try and produce A quantity of bagels, which is what you need for that single store. You're going to then try and produce B quantity of bagels, which is what you need for that single store plus the additional store that you want to build. And then you're going to, just for giggles, you're going to go ahead and see what happens if you do 3 stores with that single equipment, that SAC1. What you're going to find relatively quickly is that your costs skyrocket. They skyrocket shortly after you have reached A output level, which makes sense because you are a good business owner and you've done all you can to vertically expand. So you're already producing a quantity of bagels in your single shop, which is why you're looking to do a horizontal expansion anyways. So SAC1, probably not the best option for expansion. Let's look at the other 2 options. You got SAC2. SAC2 is the option where you purchase 1 more commercial oven and 1 more commercial kettle. Are those things cheap? No, they're not cheap. I went ahead and went on to Google this last week and I looked up top of the line commercial bagel ovens and kettles, and you're talking about roughly $34,000 to get into that type of a machine. That's not a small business expense, especially not for a small business. $34,000 is going to require most small businesses of equipment. It's going to require most small businesses to take out some kind of a small business loan. If you take out a small business loan, what is that going to do to your short run costs? It's going to increase your short run costs. Just like you have to pay the lease every month, you're going to have to pay that small business loan every month. It's a fixed expense. There's the possibility that you would be able to self-finance if you had saved in your owner's equity enough money to purchase that oven. That would be ideal because you wouldn't have to pay the interest on the loan. It would be ideal. Most businesses don't have that ability to purchase major commercial equipment through owner's equity. Some businesses do, and that is due to incredibly thorough, long-run planning. But where you would look to find out whether or not you had that money, you would go back to what we've discussed earlier in the class, which are the 3 types of financial statements. You have your balance sheet, you have your income statement, you have your statement of cash flows. You're going to be looking most closely at your balance sheet, which contains your assets, your liabilities, and your owner's equity. You're going to be looking at that owner's equity. Do I have enough money to purchase this new equipment? So after you've run these different assessments, these different analyses, what you're going to find is that your production output capacity is going to rise with additional equipment. This is something that should be a no-brainer, but it's worth mentioning because it's something you would find if you ran the numbers. You would find that, hey, if I have 2 ovens and 2 kettles, I can make twice as many bagels as I used to be able to make. That's good news, right? If you want to expand horizontally, that's great news. But you're also going to find that your short-run average costs are going to rise. We talked about the idea that you're going to be paying off a small business loan in most cases. But even if you don't have that small business loan, even if you had the money in owner's equity, your short-run costs would rise. because you're producing more goods. You're going to be purchasing more flour, using more water, using more electricity. No matter how you purchase the oven and the kettle, your short-run costs will rise with a horizontal expansion. Finally, you're going to determine with your short-run analysis that your short-run costs are going to rise with additional equipment. Most likely it's going to be in the form primarily of a small business loan, but even if you don't take out that small business loan, you are going to have to pay for the maintenance of the equipment. You're going to have to pay for the upkeep of that equipment. That's going to be an added short-run cost. But what you're also going to find when you do the short-run and long-run analysis is that there is a production point where it makes sense, where it would be more expensive if you did not purchase additional equipment. If you're making quantity A bagels, which we've determined you are a successful small business owner, you own a bagel shop that has maximized its vertical expansion, you are making A quantity of bagels. If you are going to attempt to make B quantity of bagels, which is a horizontal expansion, it's going to cost you less money to purchase additional equipment. Now, should you buy one additional machine? Should you buy 2 additional machines? This is all short-run and long-run analysis that you have to decide as a small business owner. And that really gets down to it. With short-run and long-run analysis, you're going to be able to determine whether or not you can expand. You're also going to be able to you're going to be able to determine how much you should expand. That is why short-run and long-run average cost analysis is such an important tool for planning for the future for small business firms, for all business firms. That will conclude our lesson on short-run and long-run average cost analysis. It is part of a larger conversation, which is the cost-profit analysis, which is a tool used by business and firms to plan for the future. Thank you.